So we're going to have to do the ayes tonight. So, there we go. All right. Let's see. With the consent agenda, comments from the public. No comments from the public. Superintendent's report.
Okay, I have a few items for you. We've been on a nice long streak of no students in quarantine, but we hit the wall this week. And at the elementary, we've had several. We came back this week with, or ended last week with some whose parents had tested, so they had to stay home. And then today, our early childhood, special education early childhood, we had a staff member there that had tested positive, and so after investigation, Angie checked that out. We had to shut that down. So afternoon and morning sessions were shut down until about the 15th. Since we don't go on Friday, it'll be the 15th, I think, is a Monday, and they'll start back up. We're now on 10 days of quarantine time instead of 14. That's what the county has adopted, and that's what we use. That's CCDs and CDCs, and then we have but since they don't go on Friday, they won't come back till Monday. I believe it's correct. Total, if I have this right, is 32 at elementary students and 4 staff, which one of those staff goes to positive. Like I said, several of them were just a few families with a large number of kids, and their parents, a parent or someone, had tested. But it did actually involve someone at school, so causing this. So we have to still be diligent in our mask and glasses and things like that to keep our classrooms safe from having to go into quarantine. Of course, I don't have to tell you it's cold outside. We'll keep an eye on the weather this week. It's supposed to actually get colder through the week. So far, first day, buses are running and we get them started and everything. We have them plugged in, but we don't have heated facilities for them or anything. But hopefully they'll continue, and we'll keep a watch on that. With the weather the last couple of weeks, we've definitely hit the overtime. And we budget for snow removal and things like that, but it only takes a couple of storms and we go through that, particularly if we have to use outside staff beyond our own maintenance staff. So the maintenance guys have been putting in a lot of time because they're also driving buses. Well, one maintenance guy at the moment, and because they're also driving buses. So they're doubling up and helping each other and putting in a lot of time, as well as like wrestling tournaments that we've had and some things like that. So hopefully after tonight we'll have an additional maintenance staff member on board. We're still going to continue advertising for regular bus drivers and more people that can substitute bus drive. A little bit of update on activities. Because of the COVID protocols with Keisha, they thought more wrestling would be better wrestling, I guess. They have to because of numbers. It's not really their fault. But we now have a district, regional, and sub-state wrestling. It's whoever can survive will continue to go on, I think, the way it's going. But a lot of these kids have wrestled the same kids at league and at district, and they'll probably continue wrestling the same kids until it's time to go to state. And the reason they divided that up is so you don't have too many people in one gym, too many wrestlers at one event at a time. So we had districts last week, there'll be regionals this weekend. The girls are going through the same process, there's just fewer of them. State wrestling this year will be a one-day event at Hayes instead of 2 days. So it'll be on Saturday, 27th. I believe it's the right day. Is that right, Mr. McHugh?
The girls are the day before.
The girls are the day before.
They're in Salina, though.
They're in Salina, yeah. They have like 2 divisions of girls. So this is the 3-2-1A, and of course will be at Hayes. Still limited entry though at Hayes too, correct, Mr. McCune?
As far as spectators?
Yeah,
Yes.
so. The 4 family members or whatever, is that the rule for Acacia? Or do we know yet what they're gonna be at Hayes?
They gave me an example, like if 5 wrestlers qualified, that there would be 7 tickets. And I think they're basing that off of, if they have full brackets of 112, based on the number of the seating at gross,
Gross.
divided by 112. So then you take that comes out to about 7. So you take your 5 wrestlers times 7, you get 35
35
tickets.
tickets.
I think that's how it looks.
Okay. We'll soon have parent-teachers conferences in a couple of weeks, February 24th. I know for sure elementary, and I think junior high and high school is trying to figure out what they're going to do those days as well. I think that's the main things I have at this time. Any questions?
We still doing the MCEO music festival?
No.
Has it been canceled?
Go ahead, Mr. McCune. You can.
We're still going to kind of have a version of it. Ms. Cochran is working, and Mr. Mordecai are working with kids, still working on some ensembles, still working on some solos, and having that day that we had set aside for the MCO Music Festival to still have some judges come in, maybe let parents come in and watch, but still keep the numbers low, just for our kids to have that experience still.
Just our kids.
Oh, okay. All righty. Number 7, which is curriculum update, fine arts.
Fine arts.
I have a slideshow to show you guys.
Suppose you want the screen, huh?
Some of the artwork that we've been working on so far this year. I love the technology. Okay, so I'm actually really excited to get to come and talk to you because I've never done this before, and I know it's hard for, with the limited amount of time that I'm at the elementary school to kind of do art shows and stuff with the little kids and stuff, and to show you how important elementary art is for our kids and the growth of the program and things like that. So I'm going to show you some of the kindergarten things that the kids have been doing so far this year. Plus, we also did ceramics and stuff at the beginning of the year since they missed out on it last year because we were supposed to do it right when we came back from spring break, and then we never came back. So we went ahead and did ceramics this year just to make sure that they didn't miss out on 2 years of it. So with kindergarten, they do a lot of shapes, lines, colors, things like that, building their fine motor skills, learning how to follow multiple directions, steps and things like that, because a lot of times one thing at a time is kind of hard for them. So by the end of the year, they're following multiple steps between demonstrations and things like that. I give them a lot of chances to do problem solving and use their creativity and imagination. In first grade, we build on that. We add texture into the elements. So they're doing more kind of free thinking stuff. We add a lot of literature stuff in. We'll watch a book or something and do a project with that. Again, a lot of multi-step directions, still continuing to work on those fine motor skills. Just painting and drawing and things like that help them so much in the classroom with writing letters and doing other little things that they're doing, drawing their shapes and math and their numbers and stuff. But we also add even more imagination, more creativity, because you can see like these are starting to be a lot more different than the kindergarten projects that we did. And in second grade, we're learning how to blend colors, and again, each kid is given the same set of directions, but you can see everything is really starting to be more and more different, which I love, because I tell them, even though I'm giving them the same directions, they need to try to put in their own little bits of themselves and kind of their own little pieces of if you put pieces of artwork through the whole year, you'll see that some kids just have their own style and they're really starting to develop it in second grade. And it just continues to build and build as they get older. So in third grade, we are doing some aerial perspective, which sets them up for 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective and things like that, which they really had a fun time doing. At first, a lot of the kids were like, oh, I can't do this. This looks way too hard, Mrs. Granberry. And it's like, no, we'll do it step by step. And once, you show them a few little things, and they're really excited. And they told me, a couple of them told me they were showing their parents how to do it at home. And then in fourth grade, we start learning how to use tints and shades and really working with color theory and starting to get them to understand, where the light is reflecting and where there's shadows and things like that. And just starting, again, to use more and more imagination and be more individual instead of wanting to do what their neighbor's doing. Fifth grade, we're really starting to compound the directions and using foreshortening, which, helps with perspective and learning to draw things that are more realistic. Working with overlapping, giving them kind of some scenarios or some ideas, and then they have to basically solve the problem by using their own imagination. Sixth grade, lots of things happening here. Getting them ready for middle school art. The one that's down at the bottom, they weren't allowed to use any pencil for that. They had to use their imagination and see the letters before they cut them out of blocks. And so, like their names and stuff down at the bottom, they at first struggled a lot with that, seeing where you needed to take the negative parts off of it and leave the positive behind. And so from that, we moved into being able to draw things more realistic, like you can see the pumpkins there. And then we just finished our masking project where that had lots and lots of steps, but it's a watercolor project. And so teaching them how to build layers before moving into middle school. And then Art 1, which is mostly 7th graders. There are a few 8th graders. We work a lot with art history, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional projects, optical illusions, really stressing positive, negative space. Abstract versus observation. So you can see like the hands are definitely their observation. They had to look at their hand and draw it and add the shading and shadows and stuff. And then the two that are kind of counter from each other, those are their abstract. And you might look at those and be like, that's not really a big deal, but that was the hardest project that the kids have done so far this year, for them to really understand that it doesn't have to look like something. Like shapes and lines, and just they really struggle a lot with that one because they want it to be something, and so that was definitely one of their hardest ones that they did. The one up above is it's their arrows project. It's kind of hard to see, but that was showing them the difference between 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional on just a plain piece of paper and getting it to look more 3-dimensional. Here's some of their op art stuff that they did. They had a lot of fun with that one. And then charcoal forms, again, really working the value and shading and highlights and getting it to look like an actual form. Their tessellations, they just finished these, and we worked with, I kind of let them choose. I demonstrated how to do the 3 different types of tessellations, and then they got to choose which one they wanted to do, and then incorporating all of the things that they've learned so far this year, like their value and their shading, positive, negative space, and put it into this project. And then with Art 2, we work a lot with textures, positive, negative space, 2-point perspective, art history, things like that. And this was one of their texture projects. It's one of their first ones that they did. This one is their notebook optical illusion one. They had a really fun time with this. But again, I let them choose their subject matter. I give them the parameters of the project, and they get to choose the subject matter, which they really enjoy. Here's their Zentangles. Again, working with positive, negative space, textures, patterns. And then this is a scratch art project that they did. Without elementary art, you wouldn't be able to get some of this stuff for middle school kids. Like, this is really, really good talent right here. Marisa Templar made the little bird there, and it's blown up so you can see a little bit better, but all the detail strokes that go into that, and that was just a black piece of scratch art paper that she created that from. Here's some of their two-dimensional projects, or 2-point perspective, sorry. And last year we did 1-point perspective, and we actually had to do 1-point perspective at home over Zoom. And so they didn't get to do their big project. So I was really pleased with how these turned out, you know, because you really need to understand 1-point perspective before you can move into this. And I feel they did an absolutely wonderful job. So, but that's what I have for you. So we're starting clay this week, and kids are always super excited about clay. So look forward to showing you some of that stuff at the showcase. Thanks.
Thank you. Please grab it.
Yeah, Trump has something too.
Ms. Trump?
That goes in the curriculum.
I came to you last year and asked for permission to add a class to expand our pathways, and that's what we're doing again this year. Baby steps, just keep expanding and expanding and expanding. But what I would like to add this year is a class called Business Management. When it comes to pathways, I have to go off of this, which is just my guide. The kids have to have a class that's up here. They have to have a class that's down here. And then one that's, oops, sorry, this is all middle. And then one that's down here. And Business Management is the class that I would like to add. We have the business teachers to do it, so it would just be a matter of the material. And what I like about adding the business management and administration pathway is when you get down to the bottom, you can take it towards accounting and business law and finance, or you can take it the other direction and go into production welding, ag welding, culinary essentials. So it really fits a broad range of our students. And with it, I would also then be able to open up the government and public administration pathway, which really gets into more of the law things and the politics, public administration, obviously, and marketing. So with this one course, I would be able to then offer 3 more pathways to our kids. What I was hoping to do with Pathways this year is really go into that application level and get them out into our community more and do more of that supervision kind of work. But COVID threw a wrench in that, and it just got to be too hard to get all of that done. But next year, I have gotten word back from Tara that she is 99.9% sure that we will get full funding for that JAG program, which will also be putting kids into the workforce. And they have said that they would help with that supervision, and so I really think that'll be a nice dovetail, and that I'll be able to take the pathways to that next level next year. And so then in addition to that, if I could add this business management course, I could then offer 3 more pathways that our kids could move into and then have apprenticeship opportunities with. Questions?
Do they get any type of college credit as well?
That's all. This is where the SB 150 comes in, so that if we go into what's called an articulation agreement with a school, what happens is if they take this course from us, and then they go to, say their articulation agreement is with Fort Hays State then gives them credit for that. They don't have to retake it, but it's not a dual credit course. What it can lead to, and there's another pathway that I'm hoping I'll be able to get to soon, but I'm struggling to find people with the expertise, would be pathways that lead to things like EMT certificates, law. They could lead with the ability to be a police officer, the ability to be a firefighter, the ability to be EMT or CPR. And that helps our school in that we are judged on graduation rate, but we're also judged on post-secondary success. And any student who leaves with a certificate like that, we're an automatic post-secondary success. So I like that, but I also like the fact that this child is leaving high school with the ability to get jobs and be a productive member, whether it's supporting themselves as they go through college or they turn that into a career. So that's what I'm looking at trying to figure out, but right now I can't figure out how to get teachers who are knowledgeable in those areas that are willing to teach it. So I'm struggling there, but I'm not giving up. But that's my next one that I'm going to tackle. But for right now, I'd like to add this business management course to our offerings.
Need a motion?
Need a motion?
I would move we do it.
Second.
We're gonna have a motion and a second to add the business management course at the high school. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
We'll be back about that JAG, I'm sure, later, because that's probably bigger than what we made out of it so far, but once we get it lined out, that's,
Yeah.
and then getting help with funding from the community foundation is going to be very helpful to us as well. Okay.
Number 8, go ahead.
Number 8. Policies.
Board policy adoptions.
Because I just can't wait, they're fun. Okay, I split these into 2 different groups because this first policies we reviewed quickly last month, and one that was a little bit different is, of course, all these have come about because of really COVID brought attention to it in board policies and contagious disease and various things that we've probably done at times for the flu on rare occasions, but with COVID it was happening in districts all across the state. So people needed some policies to back it up, so KSB worked on that. Another thing is if you have to let school out, which I think they were aiming at letting school out in case you had too many cases or quarantine or had to shut school down. But also, for us, it's snow days and various things like this. But I do need your input on what you would like it to be. It says school may be dismissed, students may be dismissed from school only by the superintendent, or, and it has a blank. And I'll tell you in the past what we've done is, like back when we used to go to conferences and stuff and I'd be out of town, I would have an administrator that I'd say, hey, could you, if we need to call off, Mr. Roy will call off today, or Mr. McEwen will call off today. So I think we'd say assigned administrator would fit in there unless you have some other idea who, usually that's who is, they do the same thing I would do, they would be in contact with bus director and things like that, and call school off. So I think you can't read my scratches, but an assigned administrator to that would fill that blank there probably for us, unless you would like something different. And then down here, it also says how you would announce it. And of course, our main way, we try to get it on the radio, TV station, usually the KWCH is usually who I use the most, because we also use our textcaster and our social media systems in the district and get people to sign up and get it out that way as well. So probably our best ways are the radio and textcaster, but I just added those, so I would have we type that out and have that in there if that's meet your approval. Bomb threats, hopefully those were the old days, we don't have those anymore. All this is language that probably was already in there, they've just changed the language just a little bit on the E, BBD. And then, if you don't mind, I'll skip down to the next one so that we can, if you want to approve them, you can approve them all at once. The rest, this was, whenever it's G, like a GAR, it's staff. It deals with employees. So, same thing. It basically, you tell an employee they have to stay home. For example, if they test positive for COVID, you say they can't come to work. You have the right to tell them they cannot come to work. That's kind of the short version of what they have going on there. And to protect students and other employees, obviously, that work for us. And you can require a course statement from the doctor saying they are well enough to come back to work, or the local health officials after they come off quarantine, which usually, especially when we were dealing with staff, county health, of course, handles that. They tell us, okay, they can come back this day. So really, we're already doing this, but it's in your policy now. That probably wasn't in that kind of detail in your policy before. And of course, communicable diseases isn't just COVID. You have other things too. We have a flu outbreak or anything like that, which we've had in the past. So, and what you can require them to have. The next thing is this pretty much the same kind of dealing with the same issues, except whenever it's a J, it's students. In your board policy, anything that starts with a J is student, deals with students, and it's pretty much the same thing. Local health, and you can, this is kind of the wellness plan here, but which isn't, we have that already. But we also have that we can require students, the same thing, to have written a note if we have to, or our county health and our health nurse say these students can come back to school this day, or we can require a doctor's note. So basically it's the same thing for students. That's what we have for staff. And so once the G and the other starts with the J's, and then since it's all one, a part of one policy, they just put the whole thing in there. But the main changes were with the contagious disease. That was the main changes. They clarified some of that kind of stuff. Okay. And they recommend checking your policy and health and wellness plans every 3 years. We do keep our wellness plans up to date because we have a wellness committee and they do a good job. And of course, record keeping, our record keeping is with our school members. That's most of our record keeping. And that's the main parts of those policies. The last policy that was on here that they had up for approval after all the wellness and such is the one on gangs. See if I can get to it down here. Gang intimidation. Something we don't worry about, but in bigger districts, and I suppose some smaller districts too, they do concerned about that. Just having programs and stuff to help teachers to be able to identify gang activity at school activities. They have a lot of problems at activities, especially people showing up that really don't even go to school there. It just says you give them training on that, identify those characteristics. So at least that's one thing we don't have to deal with. So I don't know that you need this policy. If you want to have it included, in case you ever do, you can. But the others, I would recommend that you add the changes or modifications to those policies. I don't know if you want to individually identify them or just identify them by the whole group.
What is your prerogative?
Or the KASB recommended policies or whatever makes it easy for you. Is there?
I will move that we approve the new board policies as presented by the KASB. Do we have a second?
A second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Calendar.
Okay, we worked, really, I guess I worked with some representatives of the buildings on the district-wide school calendar for next year. This is not like an activities calendar, this is our beginning of school calendar, or academic calendar, I guess you could call it, that the board approves each year for the next year. We've always said they are generally end up being quite a bit alike each year because it's kind of hard to make changes. People get set when we do things, and so we continue with what we have. A couple of things about the calendars, though, to keep in mind are that we are in July. You know, you always go whether you decide whether you're going to do days or hours and counting time for students, and we always go with hours. And we have 1,116 hours that we must attend each year, minimum. And we always then put on our calendar so that we have hours beyond that in case it snows or we have the flu or whatever happens and we have to miss days. Now right now, if we would have something with COVID or something, we could ask for forgiveness on days. But normal years, you do not get forgiveness for days. So we worked on the calendar. Teachers did a good job with some ideas, and we generally have at least 170 days of student contact days where students are in school. We do count the parent-teacher conference as a student day. They allow us to do that. And then we have 180 days of teacher contract days in that range, somewhere in that area. So I think this year we're pretty good on that. I know we have plenty of hours. So if we have new staff next year, any new staff, they would come the Friday before. Veteran staff shows up on the 16th of August, which is very similar, corresponding to what we have every year. That's when fall sports practice starts, generally. That's when we have our beginning of year in-service days, a work day, which does not count for any hours, or really, I mean, it's helpful for the teacher, but it doesn't count towards anything for hours or anything like that to finish the year. The first day of class is the 20th, would be the 20th next year. We do have, and I'm not sure we have all the right dates on there, we have NTESS early releases scheduled on this calendar already. Before holidays, it's in the agreement, I believe, that we get out early before our holidays in most cases. Then the end of the 9 weeks, you can see on there parent-teacher conferences. We still continue. We went ahead and left Veterans Day on there, although it's been a couple, 3 years since we've been able to have Veterans Day parade because of weather. Usually it's cold and wet, and a lot of our veterans don't need to be out in that anymore, or that age that we've had involved anyway. Thanksgiving break the same as usual. Winter break agreed to the 22nd through the 2nd of January. Then come back for a work day on the 3rd. Students on the 4th of January. The one we have in-service there, of course our January in-service we always have Martin Luther King Day. We still schedule the MCL Music Festival, which I'd gladly let any other districts or any other district in the league have, or just so they can see how much fun. But we do have that schedule still at this time. The one change was, and this has happened, I know in the past here, is the state wrestling Friday. They used to get off on state wrestling Friday and not have school at all. And the teachers felt like that would be a good thing to bring back. So we put that on there. That's the 25th of February next year, I believe. Still has spring break. Third grading period is in March, ends. Good Friday, Good Monday, we've traditionally had with the last day of school, the students being on the 19th, the work day on the 20th. So I think it's pretty close to correct. Counting the parent-teacher conference, I think there's 172. There's really, truthfully, 170 contact days, but 172, and then 180 contract days for the teachers. And second semester is a little longer than first semester, which is not unusual because Christmas break tends to gobble in the first semester. But we like to end it with a good clean break. You want to come back and try to finish your first semester. So that is, does that look close to right? That is our, and I will say this, MTSS days could change a little bit. I think we have them, but they could not quite be accurate on them yet. But we're a little flexible on those. So this would be what we would recommend to the board for next year's academic calendar.
What are the wishes of the board?
Make a motion to approve the district calendar as presented for school year 2021 through 2022.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Abby seconds. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
So that would give us like, the different buildings are a little bit different because their lunch times are a little bit different. Like elementary might be 5 minutes longer each day, but pretty soon that adds up. So I kind of build it off of high school, but we have like probably at least 6 days, to be quite honest, built in case we would have weather or something. So we have some cushion built in a little bit. Yet gets the number of days that meets what we've normally done as far as contract days.
All right, anything else on that one? Reports to the board. Would you like to start?
Sure. The NCK SEC met January 18th at 7:30. The administrators have been completing observations, evaluations, and networking through Region 8 meetings, New Frontier Community of Practice, KSD quarterly meetings, and directors conference calls. They hosted Region 8 in January with 9 visitors attending here in Phillipsburg and others zooming in. The future events or happenings at NCK SEC include Project Stay, Autism Team, Region 8 and Larner, KSDE Quarterly, Women Connecting with Women, KIC Executive Board. It was Board Appreciation Month, and it was recognized by Mrs. Rhea. Is it Rhea or Rhea? I don't know. And certificates of appreciation were given to the board members. The big thing is position of director was filled of NCK SEC. It was offered to Share Grieving for a 2-year contract starting July 1st, 2021 until June 30th, 2023, pending certification, which should be done this summer, I believe she said, in May to June. She accepted and the board voted. It passed 8-0. The assistant director has been listed, so we're currently waiting to fill that position. Next meeting will be next Monday at February 15th at 7:30.
All right. Curriculum committee met on January the 12th. The minutes were approved, nothing from Applied Technology. For language arts, Amy Burge presented at the December meeting. For fine arts, Mrs. Granberry presented tonight. The MCL paint-in is March 3rd at Plainville. Nothing from math or science. For social studies, Mr. Johnson presented on voting and government at the January meeting. There was no geography being nationwide, but Mrs. Burton used 2017 questions, and Caitlin Jones finished first, and Cole Hammond was second. In the wellness, Pam Shelton is doing some yoga, and the teachers are walking after school. They have 10 to 15 teachers who were doing that. There was nothing from the assessment. Oh, they also worked on the Kansas Day 100 Days of School. Keys to the 4-year items are being talked about. The results from the Kansas Community Cares from last year were presented, and they're starting with their data. They'll be doing they did an internal audit on January 19th with Sue Jenkins, and they're working on wording and spelling and things like that. And then our next meeting is tomorrow morning at 7:30. PDC.
PDC met February 1st. Item number 13 will go through the approval of the knowledge level, application level, college level points that were approved. One individual professional development plan, and our next meeting will be March 29th.
All right. Any other board member reports? All right. Reduction in force update.
Okay, recommend, a reminder when we talk about this, following our negotiated agreement, part of this, of course, we would do today in open session, and then because it will be the deal with individuals, a little later we'll need to go in executive session to talk about those things. So just a reminder of that, and if you have questions or anything as we look at a little bit of this. The first thing I have up here are areas, and we talked about this last time a little bit, potential areas of reduction. I have a list that kind of similar to what we brought to you last time with a few additions to it. And these are possibilities. These are not, I'm not saying all these or not all these, but possibilities. Of course, elementary teaching positions. This is being brought about, of course, as we've talked about, because of our drop in enrollment in the past couple of years has brought this about. Library as a possibility, and positions in the library. Some coaching positions, high school level, and I'm talking mostly about assistant positions, as we have smaller numbers of students participating in some of the activities. We've done elementary coaches for a long time. We can save a little bit there. I'm not sure why the school does that. It seems to be a rec thing to me. But you add those together, you can save several $1,000s, to be quite honest with you. Music, talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. Business department, and this is high school specifically as a possibility. And of course, any reductions that we can save through the retirements of staff obviously help us quite a lot. There is some information in your folder also. Ms. Burton sent to me about library. So you can look at that when you get a chance to on board. Some of the reasons why libraries are important. And I told her I would share that with you. I'll look a little bit for you to also look at music. I know is a difficult thing to talk about a little bit, and a couple examples just to show you why. How would it be possible if we talked about having like fewer, and I'm not picking on band and vocal or high school, but that's an area where numbers have dropped quite a bit. So just an idea to let you see where the numbers have gone. In enrollment in the classes, so that's enrollment of students in those areas over the last few years. Part of that, as with any of our activities, our high school numbers have gone down. So when I came, we had 211, 215 kids in high school. And that's been 6 years. Now we have 185. So in some ways you're going to have a drop of numbers because of that. But as you look, can you do, we have 3 music staff, can you do it with 2? That's something the board would need to talk about and discuss and look at. So junior high numbers are a little more steady, I believe, there. They have, to be quite honest, fewer things to choose from, but their numbers have stayed fairly steady. in that area. Now, another thing I want to talk just a little bit about, of course, is some of the economics of all of this, which it always turns out to be an important part of it. Okay, this was last year. We counted 672 FTE and our numbers in LOB and general fund. This is what's in contingency reserve, which you can always use in an emergency. And you may have an emergency. We'll have to see over time. So always remember, though, that you do have that money available. And this was with a 30% LOB. This year we used the same number. We gained a little bit of general fund money because they increased that just a little bit off the court case. But because of the way they do the formula, sometimes we lost just a tad on LOB because we didn't get as much LOB state aid. You never know where they're going with that. Now, looking at 2021, you're going to have to use 653.7, I think it is, but I just rounded it. These are guesses because you never know until you actually put the budget together where you're at. But this is a guess using the budget the way it's set up this year, putting in that number instead of 672. You're going to lose at least about $163,000 of general fund. We've been over that. If the board chooses in the next month or two to go to 33% LOB and puts that out there for the community to look at, we should raise about that much. Once again, that's an estimate. That obviously doesn't make up for that quite, but it helps a lot. These get to be more of a guess because I don't know. There's a cost of living, a little percentage each year, but I did put it out there. If you ever have to use a number, let's say that's lower, like that, you're losing again. I'm hopeful that we can reestablish a number close to that at least for Norton School. But we're at FTE of 632 or something right now. You never want to have to use that number. That's all I can say. So we got to hope we get kids back.
So where's the 653 come from? Just estimation?
That was last year. That was last year's number.
So we get to use it
We
for
get to
2
use
years.
it for 2 years. You get to use the year before, the 2 year before, the year before for your number. So you know going in what your number is going to be, which is helpful in setting a budget because you know. Used to you didn't know until you sent it in, and on the 20th you had some idea. Now you know you're ahead for sure. So you can be hopeful in between this time that next year's number is above 637 kids or whatever, that it's back up to 640s or, one year we did gain almost 20 kids back one time. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but even 10 kids back would help, but 20 or 15 to 20 would be even better. Okay? So, you'd have a loss of $38,000 in general fund spending and a LOB spending. You would gain a little bit of LOB, you'd still be short $38,000 between the two from what you have had before. You can survive that. Our problem is at the same time we're trying to make up that special ed money and have that budgeted solid in our future budgets. So that's where we talked about the reduction. Had we been able to keep this number, we'd be in much better shape. That's all I can tell you. Because you could do the 33% and cover a lot of your special ed needs, to be real honest with you. Okay, so when we look at this a little bit, we look at special ed. This is just special education. So at the beginning of this school year, after transfers at the end of last year, at the beginning of this year, we put $515,000 in special ed. but we had been watching it for 2 years. We had dropped each year because we had one time we had like $700,000 in it, but we were using up our extra money to cover because we weren't budgeting it like we should have been. Partly because the increase of cost was going up, went up 7.5%, went up 5%. It was going up quite a bit in 2 years because they were also trying to keep up. And it's not, they don't have a lot of money. It's not, they're stashed a bunch of money. They're trying to give raises too to be competitive, to get staff out here. So, but we're having to make it up. The state government, the federal government's not doing it. It's the local schools are having to do it. So we make 2 payments each year to come up with almost $500,000, okay, of our money. So this year we budgeted almost $200,000. We squeezed it and budgeted $200,000. I think at the end of the year, partly because of COVID, we saved money because we don't go anywhere. We have fewer activities traveling. Staff has been doing things by Zoom as far as their meetings. I have been. I usually travel to some meetings. I travel to very few meetings. That saved us some money. So I think it's possible at the end of the year we will be able to add at least $100,000 at the end of the year transfer. Now, in budgets, at the end of the year you can transfer into a few things. If you have money left over, there's a few places you can transfer it. One of them is special education. And we have always put the biggest amount there. But you can also put it into textbooks, summer school, private education for some reason, a little bit into food service, but you're limited. They'll only let you do so much. So we've usually always put the bigger amount into special education. Because you want to have a cushion there, because in case this co-op ever gets sued and they say, hey, everyone needs to give us $100,000 more because we got sued and we lost. And in special ed, that can happen without being your fault. You want to have a cushion. Right now our cushion is contingency reserve. If we had something bad happen and they said we need this money, we'd have to come and go to contingency reserve to get it. Okay? But I'm saying we'll have at least, and I can't guess till the end of the year, I don't know. I literally do not know till almost the end of June what that carryover is going to be. We pay all our bills out. Cynthia and Gina go, okay, we've got everything paid out. Then we go, okay, this is what's left. And we divvy it up and they carry over. Otherwise, you got to give it back. So you want to carry it over. Okay, so we would end this year then with, and you can't see because of me, it's $311,000. So we say you start the next year with 311. See how much we burned through this year, even by planning a budget amount. But, and this number's just here. This doesn't. But let's just say we can't. I mean, if the co-op decides they have to have more money, I can't. I'm one vote. But let's say it's 2.5% increase. But we had $260,000 then to our 194. I don't have any idea how much there's going to carry over next year. But an amount like that, let's say, then you put this out over years. You're always going to start the year now with more than your first payment. Always remember, we don't get all the money on July 1. We have to have money to start the year and operate a little while. And so we have to be able to make our first payment, which is a pretty good chunk of change. So we want to have that money prepared to go already in, because they're going to say, okay, we need our first payment. And that's what, August? Is it August usually that they ask for it? Well, locally we have, you know, we ever so many times a year we get payments from the local governments, our county governments. And the state sends us payments at certain times. But we want to make sure we have it to start. So that's why I always have it starting more than you're going to need for your first payment, I would think. These are guesstimates down the road. I have no idea. Because I'm hopeful that these will be higher, but you cannot plan on, because you're going to be tight in other areas besides special ed. You're going to be tight in your general fund. You may need to put money over there. So you may not be able to say, oh, wow, we have $200,000 we can put in special ed. You may. But you may have to carry that over and put some of it into food service or something like that, different, so.
Why is there no transfer in 2020?
Because it really this is the transfer in, this 194 is the transfer in this year. Because it was not budgeted. It was totally using carryover. And so we went in and we went through our budget and we squeezed it and came up with that. So the transfer in really was this from the year before. Which looks like a nice big amount of money. But when you have two payments of $249, it leaves you with $211 at the end of the year. And then hopefully we have a nice carryover end of the year transfer to start up there. But this is where your cuts that you're talking about reduction. That's just a round number I put in there. That's not. But if it is too small, now look down here. You don't want to be going through traumatic things like reduction again. See? And then there's a negative number at the end. You don't have enough. So you have to take this and next year that needs to be budgeted into special education. Of $250,000, $260,000 at least minimum. Okay? These are guesses. If end of the year transfers are $100,000 each year, that's awesome. I really lowered it down here. You know why? Because that's about the time you might hit that 643 I showed you earlier. If you hit that, you're not going to have much of carryovers. But you do have contingency reserve to be used in a smart way when you need to use it. But if you just depend on it, you'll be through it before you know it. It's gone. That's another area you can also transfer into. But state watches it like a hawk. But we actually could legitimately need to use it. It's possible. Okay? Do you have any questions about that? I know it's difficult if you don't work with it all the time. Then I put like a 5% increase over here eventually. So that's why those numbers keep going up. I don't know what they'll ask for, and I don't know what the districts will give the co-op each time. I mean, they got to know that everyone else is. I know Phillipsburg lost some numbers a little bit too, so people are struggling at times. Sometimes they are doing better. So, and remember, we pay about 20% of the co-op's local funds comes from Norton. And then about 18% comes from Phillipsburg, and then it's by your number of students. Well, we're going down in that department, so, but that's not a good thing.
So what you're showing is this year for 2020, we transferred approximately 200,000, the 194,754, right?
Yes, we literally took that out of the budget in other places and brought it in and put it together.
And then every year.
So I'm saying every year we got to have that plus that. Plus,
right.
yeah.
So now you're doing 444,000 rather than just 194,000.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this would be we were short $250,000 this year if we're asking to do that in subsequent years.
Yeah. Because see, you could get by and not do it for another year, but I mean, real quick, you're going to be below your amount, you know. I mean, immediately, like, you got to do something, then boom, you're already out. You have money. So that's why something has to be done now. You could get through, you could get through 2021, but you won't get through 2022.
And on that budget, each kid's worth about $12,000, right?
I don't think they're quite worth that much. I think each kid's worth at least 8, though, probably. I don't know if they're all worth 12. But they're worth, I think I figured on the general budget, just on our base state aid from the state, the base state aid, going to 653 cost us $80,000.
So 8,000.
Yeah, it's 83,000. So it's just over 8,000. When you do transportation and all those things added in, at risk, high at risk numbers and stuff, then the second half of your budget is where the other $80,000 comes from, is the other half of it. It's different.
So why don't we just be the most flexible district with the mask and get those kids back that we lost?
The number's already set.
Yeah, but I'm talking in the future.
Who knows what the future's gonna bring?
You mean next fall?
Well, we gave up 20 and it matters.
Questions about this? More? I think anything else tonight out of the executive session.
Anything else on the reduction? Alright. We'll go on to number 12, executive session.
I think we would do the, talk about reduction first, and then second one we'll just do regular personnel.
I move we go into executive session to discuss personnel connected to the reduction in force and to include the Board of Education and the superintendent and the principals. How long?
At least 15, I'm sure.
Not to exceed 15 minutes to return to the open meeting at 8:45 in the boardroom. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. I'm going by that clock.
Matter of order.
I think that one's. Okay, meeting is back in session. Agenda item number 13.
Do you want to talk about those before? No?
The,
Those personnel that work.
is there any motions to be made or any actions to be made from the executive session?
Do you want to do a second one on this? Do we need anything on the resignations or anything to talk about? Or on the new hires? Are we okay, or?
You want to do one more? Executive session on the resignations and nominations?
We need, yeah, we need just a short one to tell you something.
Okay.
from
Ten?
special ed. Yeah, sorry, get your
Sorry, guys.
exercise, get your steps in.
I move we go into executive session to discuss not
I
only
promise this will take as
personnel,
long.
not to exceed 10 minutes to be back at 9:35 with everyone
Yeah,
again,
that's fine.
with the board, the superintendent, and the 3 building
Sorry about
principals.
that.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. I watched that clock again. With the resignations, I move we accept the retirement of Benita Slimke with appreciation for her 31 years of teaching, 19 of those in Norton. 5th and 6th grade math teacher, as 5th and 6th grade math teacher. Kelly Scott with appreciation and thanks for her 35 years, all in Norton for special education. Vicki Robinson for her 31 years in Norton for the art teacher. And accept the resignation of Kaylin Rossi as junior high girls basketball coach.
Second?
We have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Nominations. I move we approve the nomination of Terry Smothers as maintenance and also approve the extension of the principals and technology director contracts for the 22-23 school year. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carried. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the points accrued from the PDC meeting Monday, February 1st.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
So,
We have a second to approve the PDC points. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Any further business to come before the board? Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you for the call.
Thanks, Jamie.
Good
Night.
night.
thank you, ladies.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, last year he was like, I wasn't, he said, no, you can't, but this year he said, we're okay.